Greetings everyone who's watching us from wherever you around the world you're watching us from. Welcome to Black Mental Health Matters. And today I'm so excited and so privileged to host awesome people. By the way, new people, I have my boss on the show, so if I do something wrong, she might fire me. Yeah. So today we are going to talk about a topic that is so nice, but also very much ignored. We are going to talk about rejection. How does rejection contribute to mental health? How does rejection bring that aspect of self-hate and all these things into life? So today we are privileged to host one of the people who has been rejected in life, who has faced it rough, has had issues with his mental health because of rejection and all those things. So today, to get started, we are going to get into this straight away. Daniel, his camera has some issues, but I'm sure you'll be hearing what he's saying. So Daniel, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, so Daniel, I want to introduce him first. Daniel is an author. He has authored books about his situation. He's a pastor. He preaches the gospel. He's a teacher. He's a friend. He's a husband. He's a man of all seasons. So Daniel, welcome to the show. Then besides Daniel, I have some other two important guests. One of them is right here in Uganda with me. It's called Samuel Kimbo. He's an occupational therapist at our main referral hospital here in Uganda, at Butabika. And he's a very nice person. I know he has a lot of things he's going to share with us. And of course, the last lady. You know, we are two ladies today. We are two ladies, and I'm so privileged that's that way. Yeah, this lady is actually my boss. But no, she doesn't like being called boss. She's my team member. Yeah, she's a team leader. Yeah, she's a very passionate person. She talks about mental health like she's drinking porridge. You know, like this is her food. She lives it, she breathes it. She's a person of all seasons. Dr. Unati, I'm so happy to be hosting you today. I'm just so excited, and I can't wait for this to get started. Daniel, to get the show started, kindly take us through your story of rejection. Yeah, you told me a little bit of it, but I guess everyone else wants to know what really happened. How are you rejected? How did it feel? What really happened? Just take us through, and we can go ahead with the show.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everywhere where you're watching us from. Sadly, my laptop camera has not been able to help me connect. I'm having a technical challenge here. However, yes, Daniel is my name, as Claire has already introduced, and I'm one of those who has suffered, who has gone through the pains of rejection from childhood, through my life at home, through times in school, through relationships, and finally, even at place of work. So, and I've been able to come all through all those pains of rejection. So I'm going to share my story with you today. And one thing I want to appreciate is to let everyone know that rejection, every one of us go through rejection at any stage of life. Yeah. And we go through rejections at different levels. We go through rejections at different places. And what happens is that when rejection hits, all of us get to an emotional prison. You know, we get to a place where things aren't working the way they should. And that is where the biggest challenge is, you know.
Yes. So Daniel, how are you rejected? Who rejected you in the first place? We don't know who rejected you. Why were you rejected? And how did this one cost you? Daniel, are you on? Okay. As we wait for Daniel, Sam, as an occupational therapist, kindly please
Use
unmute. As an occupational therapist, how do you deal with people who have issues with rejection and they are being admitted at the referral hospital? How do you deal with it to make sure they come
Uh,
back to life?
Okay, thank you, Claire, for this opportunity. Maybe I can give a little bit brief about rejection. I think rejection, just like Daniel talked about it, everyone experiences rejection. And rejection can be the act of pushing away or a feeling of being pushed away, right from family, communities or societies. And because of certain reasons, this could be different sets of beliefs that may be different from that society. This could be religious, this could be cultural, this could be racial differences. And people find that you are a little bit different from them somehow in ways that may not be socially accepted. Sometimes they're going to see you as an alien, as if you do not belong to them. Or they also feel that they may be rejected by mere associating with you. So that fear of being rejected by others, they start pushing you away because themselves don't want to experience something that is painful. But my background as an occupational therapist is majorly in mental health. I've been there for working as an occupational therapist for about 13 years in the mental health setting. When we talk about rejection in mental health, may it come in the form of shame, sadness, or grief. Yeah? But people, when they have mental health problems, their families are going to feel some bit of shame, but even the individual themselves, they feel ashamed because sometimes they're being called names, or sometimes they feel they have something bad they did that caused the way they present themselves. But also that sense of grief, you've lost something important to you, belonging. We are all human beings, and one of the things we yearn for is social connections, the need to connect, the need to belong to a certain group where we are cherished, accepted, we are people show us empathy, sympathy, all those positive aspects. However, when that doesn't occur, normally people feel a sense of grief that all what they held important to them, the identity, all that has gone away. And it does not only come only in health aspects where people have disabilities as well, but also in situations where young people, maybe you finished college, you've applied for a job, and you've been rejected for one reason or another. Sometimes you're going to feel pain, you're going to feel that sense of loss, and that may not only have immediate consequences, but to some individuals, who have gone through several rejections, they start to view the world differently. As we shall see later on, it may affect them in terms of self-esteem. They may develop other kind of psychological and mental health complications that might worsen further, or that can again drive them further into rejection. Yes, and when you look at today, also as human beings, we are in a world where we do many things that are somehow keeping us socially disconnected. We like technology, but sometimes again technology might also have its challenges. I mean, when you miss someone, you can Skype, you can Zoom, and whatever, which is a good thing, but it's not the real connection that you feel when you're face to face with somebody. So people are not alone, but usually they are lonely. Okay, you might have so many followers on a certain page, but you're lonely, you lack someone in your life, and that is going to lead to feelings of isolation, and later on also depression might set in. So those are some of the things. And rejection sensitivity. Some people, there's what we call rejection sensitivity. Some people, because of fear for being rejected, again, they may push themselves further away because they fear criticism, because of the way they behave, because of by the nature of their culture and other aspects, ethnic minority groups, people with different beliefs, the LGBT community, all those they might further push away because they fear the rejection and the negativity they are going to experience from individuals. And that may also bring in certain mental health aspects like social anxiety. People may feel, may stay away from social situations because they may anticipate that people are going to criticize them, judge them negatively, and later on we see that when this gets to extremes, people right from childhood, if someone has been rejected, sometimes they may avoid situations where they expect people to judge them, and sometimes they develop tendencies like avoidant personality problems, borderline problems, people who have extremes of emotion. Sometimes people may not understand them clearly and they are going to be very, very judgmental. And that's why sometimes they prefer to stay away. It's better to stay away than being criticized, or always people quickly jump to conclusions and find negativity or fault in you. But also I've seen among children and young people who present with other neurodevelopmental problems like attention deficit, hyperactivity, autistic spectrum. Because of the nature of the condition, sometimes they may not, they may have challenges in communication, in pro-social behaviors, and their peers, as young as they are going to exclude them as early as that age. And they are going to develop certain challenges like feeling of anger, low self-esteem may set in, and many other complications that may come around. So it might not only have the immediate consequences like pain, but also it has long standing emotional abuse. Parents who have been very, very critical of their children right from childhood, being negative. We may not see the scars of emotional abuse, but a parent who continuously and consistently airs out derogatory statements towards their children, okay, it's going to have a long-term impact on the emotional development of this child, okay, and later on these people are going to grow up with what I've called rejection sensitivity, because they have gone through a lot of these traumatic experiences, which may not be physical, but rather emotional, the invisible scars that we talk about. So it is really, really an important thing that we need to recognize, we need to address, and even support those who have gone through feelings of rejection. All people I've talked to, I've interacted with, who have experienced mental health problems, they have gone through rejection in form of stigma, in form of discrimination, even religiously. Sometimes in some places people have been excluded. In some religions, we've had recently a recent commission with religious leaders. In some religions, if they know that we have a disability or a mental health problems, they will not allow you access, even when they say God does not discriminate. But in some religions, really, you find that individuals with disabilities are excluded. Okay, Yeah, so it's really a big thing, that needs to be tackled and really addressed. Yes.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you so
Sam.
much, sir.
Thank you so much, Sam,
Thank you so much, sir.
for those inputs. They are very important. Now, Dr. Onati, now this is true. We are having a man who says he was rejected, and probably because he didn't finish his story due to internet issues, but I'm sure he's going to finish up his story when he comes back online. But yes, he was rejected. He has gone through all these things. He says in school, in families, and in churches, and wherever he has been rejected. You an expert in this. You're holding a men's show. You are telling men, you know what, you have to do this in order to fit into this life. You have to live like this in order to be accepted. You have to do this. You have to cry. You have to do this. How would you advise Daniel into, let me say, okay, Daniel's friend who's passing through the same situations he has passed through to be the man that he is? How would you advise him to go on about life?
Thank you so much, Claire, for this show. It's such a beautiful show. And all of us, like you said in the beginning, we have experienced rejection. And honestly, I always want to go back to childhood. It starts in utero a lot of times. For some people, it started when you were still inside your mother's womb. Maybe your father rejected you, or your mother carried you, rejected you by words, by just that toxicity going on around you as you are inside there. A lot of times people underestimate the power of words. And honestly, it is on studies that a child that is not nurtured from that point, by the time he or she comes out to the world, there's already that toxicity that has also contributed to the changes in his or her brain. So that's where I want us to start. And of course, Samuel mentioned basically what I look at as the hierarchy of Maslow's hierarchy. We all need that connection. We all need, it's a basic need: love, shelter, connection, love, and all that nurturing. So some children, unfortunately, they don't receive that from the time they are born, and the environment they are born into, the culture they are born into. So there's so many other influences that basically contribute to that. And the sad thing is, we just need to understand that a child's self-esteem is developed by the age 3. By the time he or she is 5, he's already knowing who she is. And two things happen to us by that age. It's either someone says or does something harmful, and we believe it because our brain are still, they're immature. We believe everything, and we basically sponge everything that comes to us, whether it's good and bad. So by that time, someone basically changes your trajectory of life. You either accept that this is the way it's going to be. So if you receive that rejection, you are criticized, like Samuel was saying, you are criticized, you're beat up, just all that negativity that occurs to you. You basically decide, your brain decides, how am I going to navigate life? Two things today. That's why we have people pleasers, because of that rejection, that pain, that emotional pain. Two things happen. You accept this is life and it's unfair. You become angry, like someone was saying. You become angry, or you say, how do I survive in this toxic and unkind world? You become suspicious of others. You become paranoid. People are not kind, and all these things. So now, even your mind, you start creating all these stories, even if they are not meant to harm you, even if you meet people that are loving, because that's basically the introduction of how you were introduced to life. So now you ask the good question: how do we empowerment? So I always say, let's go back to your childhood. What happened to you? And I think all of us, our viewers here, if we could start nurturing that instead of saying, what is wrong with you? I catch myself too. We are all born to have biases. But once we understand where people are coming from with their behaviors, with what they say, we start coming from a place of compassion and love. So that's basically where we need to start, nurturing that social and emotional intelligence in us, whatever we project. And I always say, when we are rejected, there's two things. One, it protects you, or that person who's rejecting you is projecting something. Some people, Sam mentioned, there's people that probably they're also feeling pain themselves. Once they come across you, probably showing those signs they have, they start projecting on you. So we need sometimes to take a step back and say, what is going on here? Two things. Am I being protected here? Or this person is projecting his pain on me. So again, parents that are watching us, let's start in childhood. How are you nurturing your child? Are you favoring the other child over the other ones you have? Are you constantly criticizing your child? Do you only say something when your child is doing something wrong? Because remember, our kids are still maturing. It takes 25 years to mature a brain, right? So kids are learning. They are also learning boundaries. Right now, I'm raising a preteen. He's trying to find himself, who he is. It is up to me not to become an infant in an adult body, to nurture that, because he's going to come across stubborn sometimes because he's trying to make his point across and he thinks he knows it all. So it's up to a parent now to be a mature adult in that child's life, to take a step back and nurture and also empower that child's self-esteem. Because remember, I said self-esteem by the age 5 years, psychology or sociology tells us that a child's self-esteem is already built. So it's up to us to nurture it or to break it. All right. So that's basically where things start. And honestly, like Daniel mentioned, he was broken at home, at school. Let's not underestimate teachers. Teachers break us. You know, and our parents, they send us to that world. We spend our time at school. Teachers would criticize you. And okay, sometimes teachers can be jealous of you. You know, I remember growing up in this small town, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with majorettes. There was this activity, really great stuff in South Africa, where it was more of a social recreation in schools, and I was good at it. But there's this teacher who constantly hit me. You know, in South Africa, we were hit with shambok, and I was like, what is going on? And in class, I was excelling. So she could do that in class. Someone said, do you know what's going on here? You have a tracksuit that looks like hers. Simple things like that. So teachers can also be very harmful to the kids. So it's up to the parent now to listen. You know, sometimes we jump as parents. We think, what did you do wrong in that school? What did you do? Why is the teacher, targeting you? So we need to take a step back and learn to listen to our children. Okay. So men who have been rejected, sometimes, a lot of times, it's because of there was an absent father when they were kids. A lot of times, the men that I see in my practice, they were rejected by their fathers. There was never a father figure in their lives. So they felt lost. And not to underestimate the work mothers do out there. And fortunately, as Black people, we have uncles and grandfathers. But what if you don't have that? And reality is we have alcoholism now in our families and all this. So kids, sometimes boys specifically, they don't have any mentors in their lives. So you come to the world, you are rejected by your father, and you are rejected by your community where you live. Community trauma is a reality too. You come to the world where there's gangsters, and you are this lost child. You get to gangsters. That's why today we see kids that are dropouts, they are bullies, because they are not socialized. We are lacking leaders. We are lacking mentors to mentor boy children. Same applies to girl children. There's absent fathers out there. And look down in the States. You know, they are struggling right now with post-slavery syndrome. A lot of Black men, not all of them, they are in jail. They are not raising their children, and now we have all these children that are lost. They also drop out. They get into gangsters, so it's a problem that is global. We need to fix it and start working on who can mentor boys. I always say we have Oprahs, we have Michelle Obamas. They are doing amazing work to empower girls. But who's going to marry these girls that are empowered, that are leaders? That's why today we have gender-based violence, Claire, because we have men that are babies. We have men that are not empowered by men. Today we have men that have low self-esteem, that don't know who they are because there are no mentors out there. Their fathers have failed them. And remember, the fathers that failed boys, they were failed by their own fathers. So it becomes a chronological history. Now we need to heal from that. We're going to get into the adverse childhood experiences. Sam touched on them because we need to heal holistically. It starts in the family, the community, and how we are basically sent out to the world. So as we go along, we'll talk more on that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Onati, for that input. It's really amazing having you on the show today. Daniel, welcome back to the show. Hope your network is now a little bit clear. Maybe you can take us through what your experience was. Who rejected you? Like I asked you before, who rejected you? What happened? Why were you rejected in the first place? And how did this all transpire
Yeah,
up to
thank you.
where you
I
are
think
now?
you can hear me now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You can just go ahead.
You can hear.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Like I was sharing, uh, there is one fact we need to appreciate in African context. Our grandfather had 13 wives. So from the 13 wives of our grandfather, my father was one of those who was rejected because he chose to leave the religion, the African religion, and he got into the Christian religion. So he was excommunicated with all that he had, including his children. So when we came in the picture, that is the same thing that happened. We were abandoned, we were left on our own, and we were isolated, and that is how things went. And we kept growing, and it just became normal. It became like a normal life, how in the village, how everyone is struggling on their own. But then when it hit me so hard, when I was getting married, you know, when time came for me to get married,
Daniel, please proceed. I think Daniel's network is a little bit bad, but he's coming. Yeah, he talked about religion, like some said earlier on. Religion. What role does religion have to play when it comes to rejection in our societies? Dr. Unat, you can go first.
Wonderful. You know, Claire, I think because in Africa, we rely on religion, and I think it's because of our history, because of the pain that we went through, we had to find something to lean on. So, but there's a thin line. People can obsess on that, and it becomes their way of life, and then it clouds their logic, their rational thinking. So I think that's basically what happened there. And actually, I like what Daniel mentioned about his grandfather had many kids. I know that we embrace polygamy in Africa, but we don't realize the impact it has on children, the mental
exactly.
health. And it's something we ignore because we have embraced it as part of our culture. And in some families, it works well, but we've seen the impact it has on children because children felt they were neglected, they were abandoned, like he's saying, and then it goes on and on. And of course, like you're saying, religion, Sam mentioned here, if you don't belong to a certain group or you're a minority, you become rejected and you don't look like them. Again, we are born with biases. It takes conscious thinking and also the consciousness in us to realize that we can include people that don't look like us. I don't know if Sam wants to add to that, but otherwise, it plays a big role in the manner that people tend to use religion sometimes to influence or maybe to inflict pain on others and use
True.
God, the name of God, to use to inflict pain on others. But I mean, I'm not a religious person, fortunately. So maybe Sam can say something about the experiences he's seen or whatever he sees in his practice.
Maybe we should give Daniel a chance to finish up
Yeah,
this
I'm
story.
back. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, proceed.
My network is
Proceed,
not
proceed.
very stable.
You can proceed.
Yeah,
You,
so
you had reached somewhere marriage. Yeah.
yeah,
Proceed.
so when it came to the time of getting married, before getting married, I had 8 heartbreaks, 8, and those 8 were without those. I didn't count those who fired me before I proposed, and also I didn't count those who told me, "Let me give you answer after," and then up to tomorrow they've not given me answer. Those 8 are those we dated nicely. We even visited parents. We organizing the marriage, and then things didn't go on, But then along the way, that's when I began asking myself, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And before I realized it, my mental health became a challenge. I became mentally ill. And then as I kept maneuvering life here and there, and the other worst bit with our Africans is when somebody has a mental health challenge, they are seen as bad omens in the community. They are given names. They are isolated challenges. They are in fact triggered to even worse scenarios. So that is what happened. And then as time moved on, and then finally I got a lady who appreciated me the way I was and who loved me the way I was, and then I'm like, okay, I've now found the true love. Now the challenge began when the true love, the journey began. Getting married, 3 of us from our family went, me, my dad, and my mom. The rest of the family did not go. In our African context, marriage is for family members. And then the rest of the uncles and the cousins and the relatives all pulled out. So I had to shoulder everything myself. And in Africa, dowry payment is a community deal. The whole family is involved. But as for me, I was left alone. When I tried to inquire, they said it was because our grandfather had said nobody should get involved with us, nothing to do with us. So that is when I realized that, hey, this thing is serious. I was asked to pay 10 cows, 10 goats, and 4 million as dowry. And I can tell you, I shouldered it on my own. All my friends abandoned me. All my relatives abandoned me. Everyone told me, no way, you can't. So I pursued my marriage. I got married, thankfully, to my gorgeous wife, who we've lived with for the last 4 years now. And, a lot happened even during that process. There are people who have finally come out to apologize to me, especially from my family. My grandparents have died, but before they died, they have come out to apologize. They have come up to say sorry for the things that happened. They have come to apologize. That's when I got to know that actually this was something that was planned. It was planned, and they brainwashed all our uncles and aunties. They brainwashed everyone around them against my father and his family, including me. So that is how rejection can come from family. Now, when it comes to place of work, some things become, like my sister was saying, sometimes we get now used to rejection and it becomes a part of our life. Even when we are trying to do something, we go with the mindset that actually, after all, everywhere I go, I'm rejected. So maybe they will also reject. And, that mindset also triggers in. And sometimes we're not where we are because of the fear that even we will be rejected because of the past history, And like my brother and my sisters have said here, it kills self-esteem. Even me, while at school, I could know answers, but I could not raise my hands to give the answer. Why? I will fear that the teacher and the children will laugh at me. But I will know the answer, but I could not even say the answers. They will ask me questions. I will keep quiet because I've ever been battered, I've ever been harassed and beaten before. So those fears, it affects how we live our lives. And to make matters worse, also,
The network is. Proceed, please.
Okay, and to make matters worse, you see that many of us, we live our true dreams. We don't live our lives. We are living according to the expectations of others because we want them to first of all approve what we should be able to do. We live life of other people. We live other people's dreams because we want them to first approve of what we are. We first want to approve of what they think we should do. At the end of the day, we don't live our true dreams. We don't live our true lives. We live fake lives. We don't live our true identity of what we are meant to do. Everywhere we go, like me, everywhere I will want to do something, they will shout on me, no, don't do that. Don't do this, don't do that. In fact, these 4 words on my book cover, no, impossible, never, those are the words I always received from those people. They will tell me, don't do this, no, don't do this, and they don't tell you what to do, and what you try to do, they shut it down. They don't tell you what to do next. You try here, they say no. You try the other side, say don't, never do that. You come this side, they tell you this other side. And then the left take you left and the right. What happens? You lose your vision, you lose purpose, you lose your passion for whatever you want to do. You are in a place of confusion. And before you know it, bitterness comes in, anger, you begin to have jealousy over others. And even that explains why for those who are married, they end up with domestic violence, poor health, separation and divorce. These things are coming in, suicide, and even murder. That's why we're having this kind of dysfunctional societies with a very high crime rate. Where I live, Masaka, we have a prison which was meant for 200 people, but there are more than 1,300 people in that prison cell. I go there every week to talk to those inmates, 1,300 people in a place which is supposed to be for 200 people. If you go to Ugandan prison cells, they're full to capacity. And there are so many crimes, there are so many things happening. Why are people doing that? Because of the pains of rejection. Somebody is doing something out of anger, out of the frustration. They're not living their true lives. So that is what the rejection does. And it has a lot of impact on our mental health. Like that's what explains why I was saying when I was young, they will tell me to do something, I will live in fear. I will always be traumatized. And nobody notices that even in Africa. Talk to any child, you go to any village, go to any town, you find children who are traumatized and their mental health is just ill, and then and that is how we think life should be. In my village, for example, if a girl is 14 and 15 and is not married, that is a crime, in my village, because everything is supposed to be about polygamy, early marriages, producing children so early, So if you come to Uganda, especially the northern part where I come from, you find the babies taking care of their own babies. You find a 15-year-old not in school and has been taken left and the right. Why? There has been abandonment. They've been abandoned. So they try to find where to live. They try to see where they can survive because all they're doing is trying to seek for survival. So that it is a lot. It is a lot. That explains why. If you take statistics of Uganda, for example, before COVID, by the way, before COVID, mental health challenges, suicide, 80 people died of suicide before COVID numbers reached that number. More people have actually died of suicide in Uganda during this period of lockdown, more than COVID killing people. Right now we are talking about 360 people who have died of COVID in Uganda, but we have over 300 people who have died of suicide, who have died of murder-related cases. Just come to Gulu alone, just actually sub-region, check that statistics. You have a lot of people, there is a high rate of murder. Why? Pains of rejection. You have a lot of suicide happening. Why? Pains of rejection. Can I even tell you here? You might even laugh. A pastor committed suicide as well. A pastor hanged himself. In Uganda, we can bear witness. 4 men burned themselves during COVID. 4 men burned themselves. Why? Because that is suicide. Why? And those were not because of COVID, but it was just during the lockdown. And the 4 people felt abandoned, they felt not loved, and they burned themselves. One was a border man in Masaka, where I live. There was a teacher whose wife went away and married another man. The teacher burned himself. We had an engineer also the same way. Even an engineer whose wife went away, separation, the guy committed suicide. The number of people who have committed suicide in Uganda is on the rise, even more than the COVID claiming lives. But then it becomes a normal thing. People just talk about it and then nobody does anything about it. Government is not interested in that. Even I'm very sure I'm not anti-government, but I'm very sure today even there will be lockdown. I'm very convinced because the president might speak today, and one of the things people are anticipating is lockdown. What will happen to those other people whose mental health is already at risk? People are living hopeless lives. Depression is on the rise and nobody is saying anything. Sadly, in Africa, like I was saying, when somebody has a mental issues, they are given names. In fact, one time when I was having challenges with my mental health, I couldn't sleep. Then one time I was talking with an elderly man that, please, I'm having these challenges. I hardly sleep. I'm having these challenges. And all these were the signs of depression. But this is what they told me, that you are becoming a man. No man sleeps at night. Men must not be sleeping. That is how men go through, And I was explaining my problems. they were saying that that is how a man is supposed to be, you know, because that is what is said to be a man. For you to be a man, you must not sleep. For you to be a man, you must go. In fact, they told me you must worry as a man, without knowing that worry is actually a fuel, is actually a vehicle for depression. But they say that is what men must go through. Every man must go through. And by the way, men are even shying away from this fact. That's why in one of my other book, I explained how 7 men in the Bible suffer depression, and there are only 3 women who are talked about. Why? More men suffer depression, but they just hide out, you know? And it is something that's not to be talked about. In fact, one time when I wrote this book on overcoming rejection, somebody was saying, why are you writing a book on rejection? It is a normal life. We must live that kind of life. But for how long must live this life and continue having these pains affecting the entire world? You know, people can reject you for various reasons. But then at the end of the day, some of these reasons are beyond our making. You know, somebody to reject you just because of envy, that is beyond you. You know, somebody rejects you just because they fear you might become a threat to them. You know, that's why in politics, because people are insecure of their seats, you know, in the politics, they have everything to do to reject and oppose and do whatever they can to prevent others. And bringing it even back to our societies, you know, it has become a normal thing. In my village, and it is always said, if you marry a woman, she cannot give you a boy child, chase her away, reject her, chase her away, marry a woman who can give you boy child. You know, that's why polygamy is taking root in my village. You know, some of those beliefs, some of those traditional practices, you know. And one thing that we need to appreciate is, which also needs to be dealt with, is we have a lot of religion, but also we have tradition. Tradition sits in our hearts. Religion remains on our head, you know. Because of that, that explains why you rather do your cultural practices, which even you know can bring for you bad things. We rather have our traditional practices enforced than dealing with some of these issues. Issues like polygamy. We don't understand that at the end of the day, there's going to be chaos. There's going to be envy. There's going to be there's going to be beatings at home. There's going to be separation. And by the way, I want you to see this. Every man who rejects a woman rejects the woman with all the children, if she has any. You know, and these children go, like my sister was saying, the problem is there is no man figure. There is no man figure around. So the child is raised by a single mother. You know, the single mother is raising this child. This child gets also does not believe in men, also gets pregnant, gets this, also goes her way, raises the children single-handedly. Now, at the end of the society, just causes a mess. That's why, really, we need to come out. Rejection is affecting our mental health in various ways. That's why we need to really come out and appreciate the fact that we need to have this thing done. The other thing is, you realize that many people who are even now working, many of them are just surviving. Somebody says, after all, even if the money goes, after all, I have my job, I will take care of my children. They will just be surviving but not thriving, you know. And there are people who are actually right now in the prisons. They are enslaving themselves. That is the other thing that the rejection does. The impact of rejection. It puts you in a place of self-imprisonment. You know, a prison is a place where your rights are denied. But here you deny yourself rights. You don't eat because of lack of appetite. You lose appetite. You have no reason to eat. You starve yourself. You know. And then you cut yourself from friends. You cut off yourself from friends so that you don't have social network. And then mentally you put yourself to the past. You know, you incline yourself to the past because of the past experience. The pains of the past hold you back. Instead of advancing, you can't move. You can't advance. Nothing moves because of the pains. You keep yourself in that prison cell of unforgiveness. I'm very convinced you have heard of people who say, unless one so tells me this comes to apologize, I will never forgive them. And instead, you are actually hurting yourself more. The more you think about the pain, the more you are there. You don't move forward. You know, you don't do what you are supposed to do because you are taking all your negative energy in thinking about these negative ideas instead of having a positive mindset. You can't. Why? Because of the pain. You know, there is no one who is in a pain and who can eat well. Because I've been there myself. All the 8 heartbreaks, I was asking myself, what is wrong with me? But then when it came to my marriage journey where I was single-handedly alone, then I was like, what is wrong with my family? What is it that I have not done right? And before I knew it, I became so bitter. I became so angry. I became caged in my own cocoon. I couldn't even advance. I couldn't do anything. All I would do was to cry. They say men don't cry, but men cry because I'm one of those who cried. I cried. But then at the end of the day, crying is okay, but it is also a place of recovery. In fact, if you cry, that is very good. Because from the place of crying, then you are on your journey of recovery. Because after crying a bit, then you wipe away your tears, you smile a bit, move on. That is how I was able to have my 8 heartbreaks, but then now I'm a married man with 3 children now, and at the end of the day, things must happen. That's why I chose to become a mental health activist, trying to tell masses that, what, we have to arise above rejections. It is something that we go through on a daily basis. Even whatever you do, somebody must oppose it. Somebody will tell you no. Somebody will tell you it is impossible. Somebody will tell you never. Somebody will laugh at you. Somebody will tell you are crazy. Somebody will fight your dreams, but you must make your dreams come to pass. It is you to arise above those rejections. Choose to arise above those rejections. Because so many things that I did here. In fact, if there is anything I could share, one of the things that you can do to come out of rejection is the whole issue of forgiveness. Because if you don't forgive, at the end of the day, you actually give your energy to the other person. Because if you don't forgive, at the end of the day, you are giving them the right. Because all you're doing is you're giving yourself to the negative side. You're feeding your mind with the negative garbage. Instead of moving forward, you can't move forward. Why? Because you have given up your rights. You have given up everything that concerns you. That explains why many people are not where they are supposed to be just because of unforgiveness. The main health challenges you are having. Have you noticed that when you are bitter and you are not forgiving somebody, that is when you feel chest pains? That's when you feel chest pains. That's when you have all these pains in the chest. That is when you discover that actually there are pains. But when you let go, that's when you forgive, the pains go off. That is what I discovered. Ulcers and other chest complications are coming from a place of unforgiveness. And when you forgive, then health-wise, your health will begin to improve. Because if you don't forgive, you begin to transfer anger. You keep transferring anger from one place to another. If, for example, if you have received the rejection at the place of work, chances are you transfer that anger to your people in your house. If the rejection is from home, you transfer the anger to those at work. It affects your relationship with friends. It affects your relationship with yourself. And by the way, the worst rejection is when you reject yourself. Leave alone others can reject you, yeah. But then you reach a place, should you begin to reject yourself, that is the worst place. That is where people end up with suicide, because they don't see anything good with themselves. That's when they reject themselves now. You reject yourself, you reject the way you look, you don't like the way you look, you don't like anything about you. All you see yourself is you are useless. And that is the place where many people now end up with suicide. And it comes from a place, you cannot forgive others unless you forgive yourself. That's why in my book I said, forgive yourself first of all. Forgive yourself, then forgive others. If you don't forgive yourself, chances are you will still remain stuck where you are. There are mistakes we make in life, yeah. We make mistakes. But then at the end of the day, those mistakes, we need to come out of them and arise.
Thank you so much, Dan, for that story. Wow, it is inspiring. It's kind of sad, but also it's a blessing because it's going to change lives out there. People who did not know what to do when they are facing these kinds of situations. You talked about suicide, rejection, being rejected, and think about suicide. This one I'm giving it to Sam to respond to. How would you deal with someone? Let me say someone has been referred to the mental referral hospital. They have been rejected and I think of taking their own life, or maybe they actually did it but did not succeed. how do you deal with such cases? You as an occupational therapist, how do you get done with them so they can live life the way it should be lived? Kindly unmute and respond. Unmute and respond.
Yeah, so thank you. Suicide is really a big topic nowadays. I think 3 weeks back, I worked in a school setting where we are linking, doing a study on mental health and exercise and physical activity. And we found a number of young people contemplating suicide. Others they had tried a bit in form of self harm, and they because of the experiences they had gone through, others were coming right from home, cultural issues. Others were at school, actually, peers being rejected by others and excluded from social interaction. Okay, and we found about a class of about 300. We found about 10 people contemplating suicide, and this wasn't really a simple thing. We had to find ways of working with the school administration to see that we support these young people. But behind suicide, usually there is a lot of pain that people feel they cannot escape this pain anymore. Enough is enough. They are tired. They have tried maybe all alternatives, and they feel this problem is, I think, bigger than them. They cannot contain it anymore, and that's why they I think suicide is the better option in this case, so that I stop experiencing this pain. We found a lot of suicidal cases among people with depression. The other challenge we have, especially in Uganda, is substance use. Some people have committed suicide because of substance use, majorly alcohol. People, they don't know that alcohol is a central nervous system depressant. Okay, unfortunately, when they have problems, the more they take alcohol, other drugs, the more they're going to drown into problems, and this later on pushes them down into depression. And sometimes when they are sober, they realize a lot of opportunities lost, a lot of connections and social support they had, they have lost it. They are now isolated, and they feel life has turned upside down. So the only option is to commit suicide. Of course, poverty is also another factor we are looking at when people cannot meet the basics. Doctors talked about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you cannot have food in your house and you're struggling, if all the basics you're just struggling or you cannot meet them, so sometimes this will take you into depression. Already research has written so much about poverty and associating it to mental health. By the way, when we talk about rejection, even mental health workers themselves, when we talk to our colleagues in other fields of health, there's that look they'll give you, there's that weird thing they'll give you. And even when you look at practitioners, young medical students, and they are mastering, and you ask them, what do you want to master in? Obs and gyne, dentistry, pediatrics, but few really talk about as being interested to pursue a psychiatry. So even as the people in the mental health fraternity, other health disciplines, there is always that kind of I would say rejection that they give us. Though they may not directly show it to you, but there is always that sense. Or kind of feeling or treatment they'll give you. Going back to suicide, normally in the hospital here, National Referral Hospital, we consider suicide a medical emergency, because one we look at either someone is contemplating, or someone has the intent, or even they have attempted. Okay, if someone is contemplating, Usually, all has attempted. Usually, we might need to
I think there is some network issue with Sam, so I'm going to get to you and Dr. Unati. When you listen to Daniel's story, you realize he was always told to be a man, always told to man up. He's not supposed to be doing these things because he's a man. He's not supposed to sleep because he's a man. He's not supposed to cry because he's a man. You are someone who's so much into showing today's man that it is okay to feel your emotions, to live the life you're supposed to live. What kind of advice do you give to people who are experiencing what he passed through? Or what would you tell to a young Daniel so that he can live his life the way it should be lived?
Thank you so much, Claire. I love what most speakers said here. The issue of rejection really comes from the core issues start in our childhood. Once we know that we were rejected, we need to acknowledge that happened to us. Once we understand that it happened to us, that's the beginning of healing. So Daniel, fortunately, he had an insight, he was open to it, and he went on to that journey of accepting it happened, and he wanted his post-traumatic stress to be post-traumatic success. Now he has a success story. He's sharing, he's changing the world. He's going to the prisons, he's changing lives. I'm so celebrating him. Congratulations, Daniel. So what it means is we need to normalize, first of all, men have been given this leadership. This is cross-cultural. I live in Canada, but even here, it takes a man who is depressed will tell me that he's been depressed for over a year before he came to see me. So this is general, not even depression or mental health in general. Men, they've been taught to toughen up, to man up, and it starts in childhood. I'll always go back to our childhood stories. Mothers, when we raise our boy children, how are we raising our boy children? Do you expect your boy child to be stoic, to be tougher than your girl child? Because once we do that, we are telling that child to repress and suppress his emotions. So that's where things begin, to be honest. And then a child does not accept himself when he feels he could be vulnerable and share his pain because the society, her home setting, basically prescribes that you have to be tough. So that's where we start your childhood story. I always go back to the ACEs. Samuel touched on them, adverse childhood experiences. Let's not underestimate the number of boys or men who have untold stories that were sexually abused by their uncles, by their neighbors, by their fathers. That's the beginning of rejection. He touched on poverty, the emotional abuse. And all these things actually contribute to how you become as an adult. There's high levels of stress hormones, your cortisol, your adrenaline. Of course, Daniel mentioned that you start experiencing chest pains, the heart attacks, the high risk of developing COPD, the lung diseases, the strokes, these are the things that all start from the oxidative stress. So if we have insight that these things happen to us, then healing begins. So how we do it, we start going on about checking if there's any other red flags. Do you suffer from sleeplessness? Your mood is subdued, this basically depressed mood. How is your appetite? Are you drinking a lot more? What are your thoughts like? All these things are indicating that you are depressed, and these are occurring for over 2 weeks. Or there's also symptoms of anxiety, the chest pains, the worriness. All these things contribute to how you become. So that's where we start. And then there's a place for psychotherapy, like Sam mentioned. And of course, there's a place for medications. A lot of times, Black people believe that mental illnesses are for white people. Not at all. Because like I said, in the adverse childhood experiences, the exposure to wars, terrorism, these things happen between tribes in Africa. or what happened to us as a people, the history of colonialism, right? So there's all these traumatic experiences that we experience. That's a rejection to a growing brain. So that's where we start. What happened to you? And then we unpack that story and then normalize these conversations. I think it starts also helping parents, outreach programs. I like the fact that Sam has started working with schools. It starts with that in the villages. What education are you giving out there? And of course, going back to your question, understand that this happened to you and unpack that story. And once we unpack that story, there's a point that Daniel mentioned. People underestimate the point of forgiveness. When we start forgiving these stories and accept that they happen and stop the blame, because when you are a child, you start blaming yourself. When your parents separate, when your parents divorce, you think that it is your fault. So starting and teaching them and helping them, there's a way, the therapies that we conduct, cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps with your mindset. You reset that mindset that these stories that you believed for so long from your childhood don't necessarily mean they were true. Some of them, yes, they were true, but we equip you with the tools that you need to now use that stress to be a post-traumatic success for you. Because again, some of these things, some people, they go through pain to actually influence others out there. So that's basically point number one. We start unpacking the stories. We go intense on the cognitive behavioral therapy. There's room for medications too. If you are depressed, there's anxiety. Fortunately, the medications we use, they basically deal with both anxiety and depression. It takes 6 months minimum to treat depression. And of course, the continuity of therapy. It's a journey. It's not a once-off thing. You'll always get those triggers. And remember, a lot of people don't realize that with that rejection, with that emotional pain childhood, it can produce post-traumatic stress disorder. There's children that are going through that. Sam was mentioning kids are suicidal. By the way, according to World Health Organization, the highest number of suicides is between 15 to 29. Kids are hurting, and most of the times they are raised by punitive parents. Today we have narcissistic people, adults, people with borderline personality disorders. Most of these things, yes, they are biological, but a lot of times there's a family history or the toxicity that occurs in their childhood and in their home settings. So parents out there who are watching us, let's mind our language. How are we coming across? How do we come across to our children? Because these behaviors, these kids that end up in jail, a lot of them, they were failed by their parents. A lot of them, they are failed by their community where they are, because also community trauma is part of the deal. You could be growing up in a healthy environment at home, but where you are growing, those influences also contribute to how we become. So therapy, Claire, and also mentors, finding mentors. If you know that you didn't have a father figure in your life, start looking around. Or if you are a single parent out there, I always advise women who are single, try to look for a man who is upright, who has principles you like and aspire to have your kids to have, and not having a romantic relationship with that person, because you also want stability for your child. Because if that relationship doesn't go well with that man and you keep changing men, that also brings another level of rejection to your kids. So if you are single, and of course there's people that are blessed that will have a stepfather for their children who will be a positive influence to them. But if you know you don't have such an option, find that man who is upright, who could be a mentor, whom you aspire, whom you love the way he's raising his family, so that he can be that mentor for your children. And that helps the continuity of care. It helps that there is no, because now they could come. If you start changing all these men for your child, all you are teaching your child is instability, not to trust men, and all the other things that came with the teenage pregnancies, the alcohol abuse, the drug abuse. So men out there who have been rejected, accept it happened, go for therapy, find someone you trust where you could be vulnerable and share your story, because healing begins when you share your story in vulnerability and truth, and knowing that this happened to you, but it happened for you to raise up and have a post-traumatic success story. Thank you so much, Claire. We lost Claire.
Hello. You can hear me there?
Yes, Dan.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on what you just said here. According to World Health Organization's report on the 30th of January 2020, the number of those who are dying of suicide is 800,000 people every year.
Yes. Yes. And on that study, Dan,
64 million people suffer depression worldwide.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on that study, and
the age is between 19 to 29, you know? So from 15 to 29, that number.
Yes.
And this thing happens, and it is a real challenge. I just tried to show you what happened in Uganda within that period. Even right now, there are things happening. In fact, right now, I've been able to interact with the people who are even given me their suicide notes. And like my brother was saying that many of those people having those challenges, they don't seem to see any hope. They don't seem to see any way out, you know? And then at the end of the day, from my discussions with them, those who gave me their suicide notes, all they see is there is nothing that they can do anymore. But then when we talk with them, and then I share with them my story, and then we chat out a way. What can you do? What can you do? So that somebody begins to do what they can do, not what they should do. What can you do? Can you do something? What is that you can do that you can grow, so that you can use that you can do to be able to impact yourself positively, to get out of that mental challenge, to be able to get you out of that trap, to be able to get you out of that state. So the more we discuss to what they can do, actually, we've come up with amazing ideas. You know, that's when somebody actually sees that actually they can. You know, the more we have engaged, the more we've been able to talk, we've been able to see things happen. You know, the only question is, okay, everything happened, but then from this point forward, what can you do?
What can you do?
What one thing can you do? Maybe what two things can you do? What three things can you do? Those things you can do with your ability, those things you are gifted in, you can do. So that somebody can be, in fact, most of the people I've talked with, there have been those who wanted to commit suicide because of loss of a job and no money. They are able to identify projects that they can actually do, that they have actually gone up with, and to be able to help them sustain and grow what they're able to do. Like he was saying that many people reach a place where they don't see any way out. So that's when they said, you know what, why can't I die instead of going through all this pain? But then one thing that I want to still say to everyone out there, what can you do? Yes, things have failed, yes, but what can you do? What one thing can you do? So if you can identify that one thing you can do, I can assure you, do that thing, and you will continue growing in that one thing, and that one thing that you do will be able to be a stepping stone that is going to be a turning point. Like for me, the one thing I came up with was, what can I do? I loved writing from childhood. In fact, all through my school life, teachers will ask me to take notes on the chalkboard. They will give me notes to write. In meetings, people will ask, Daniel, can you take for us minutes? I knew that I can write. So that's when I began writing. You know, I love music. I can sing, I can play the guitar. You know, what can you do? That maybe through what you love doing, you can help overcome those negative thoughts, so that you put your energy, you put your focus, you put everything you can in this right thing that you can do. And by doing that, you will be able to deal with this negative side and develop a positive mind that can take you to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much, Dan. I think we lost Claire. Sam, you can actually probably pair up. I'm not sure if you can see comments on your end. I don't. But also to our viewers, to what Dan was saying, indeed, the studies show, the World Health Organization tells us that over 40% and probably 48% of murders in couples are due to the partner. So all this pain, people actually bring it to their marriages. They bring it to their to their relationships. Let's talk about social media. People who are insecure with low self-esteem, they even hurt when their post is not liked by people. It's little things we still have our inner kids inside us. Each one of us has an inner child. In Up until we heal that inner child and accept these things happen to us, and we start unpacking these stories with a trusted therapist, we start seeing things positively, and we start realizing that no, you are not everyone's cup of coffee. I think that's one thing we need to realize. Leaving this space, we need to understand that we are not everybody's cup of coffee. Once we understand that, but we can only do that when we heal our inner child, because our inner child pops up when we find that, oh, someone liked Claire's post more than, oh, she didn't come to my wedding. It's those little things. They hurt us. But once we heal inside, it's not about that little thing that was done by that person on Facebook. Once we know that we have these triggers, they are there to notify us that there's a work we need to do. Thank you so much. Claire, we found you again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Unati. Sorry, that was a technical hit. Sorry. I'm so sorry about that. But also we are out of time. We have already bypassed our estimated time. So we're going to have closing remarks, maybe we shall start with Sam, then Daniel, then Dr. Unati will close. Unmute, please. Unmute.
My closing remarks would be that rejection is everywhere. Okay, we experience this rejection, but what can we do about it? In cases, people have used rejection to instill fear, especially on a societal level. Okay, sometimes you find some communities, if you have a different way of view, they use rejection as a way of instilling fear so that you comply. Okay, but I think we need to. It is high time we face our fears. Okay, and in mental health, usually there are two things that have been helpful to a lot of folks out there. We have new models in mental health. One is called peer support. People who have been rejected because they have mental health problems, we've been able to identify individuals with lived experiences supporting them, and they have formed quite powerful networks that people feel like, if my family is rejecting me, well, it's okay. I have folks that have become my family, people who understand me, people who will not reject me. And that actually has helped to reduce the number of relapses that we've been seeing in the hospital. And we've done research on that. Two, we talk about religion. Religion as well can have a positive aspect. In Uganda, most people, before they come to hospital, actually they run to churches. They run to cultural leaders. And one aspect they have is what we call unconditional positive regard. Come as you are. God loves everyone. Okay? And that's why these people go to those places, because they feel people accept them. They see them as brothers and sisters. Okay? And the common saying in most of these Pentecostal churches, you will see them calling another person brother, sister, how are you? So people feel like they are really liked and supported. I think the other one is reject negative self-talk. Okay? Sometimes we've had all these demeaning and derogatory statements, and then we continue to sink it in ourselves. But I think it's high time when we refuse and say, this is not who I am. Okay? Nobody knows me better than I can be. Okay? I know myself better. I know my potentials. I know my limitations. So nobody should stand there and start to judge who I am, or who should I be. What can I do? I know myself better. I know what I can do. I know what can take me out of this challenge better than anyone else. I think those are some of the things that we can emphasize. Yes.
Thank you so much, Sam. Daniel, are you there?
I'm here.
Daniel, are you
I'm
there?
here.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Your closing remarks as far as today's discussion was concerned.
Yeah, thank you. I want to still want to let everyone out there appreciate the fact that rejection, like like Brother Sam was saying, rejection happens to everyone else. It is something that happens to us on a daily basis. However, how we respond to it makes the many times why we are having this negative result is because of we react to rejections. But what I came to appreciate over time is to let people appreciate one thing, that we let us respond to rejections. When we respond, the outcomes are positive. But when we react, the outcomes are negative. That explains why when somebody rejects you, you get angry, you can't react. In the course of the reaction, you get this negative action. But when you respond, one, you sit down to analyze, why has this happened like this? Did I contribute anything to this? How can I do it better? You are responding, you analyze every detail there. Then you come up with positive solutions that can help you deal with it so that you don't have to, always be on this negative side. You can choose. It is by choice. You choose to respond instead of reacting. Have you noticed that in every meeting where you're having meetings, and have you noticed that when there is a reaction to the minutes or reaction to the communication, the pressure in the meeting hall is very high. But when you have this agenda, this item on the agenda that let's respond to this, response always bring out positive outcomes. So my call to everyone out there is, let us respond. Let us learn to respond instead of reacting to rejections, because rejection will always be there. Let's respond to them. That's one number. That's number one. Number two, I want to explain that you can only do what you know. Yeah, you only do what you know. So I want to challenge that you identify what is in my family. For example, how are the events in my family? How are things happening? What are some of the trends that have been happening in my family line? Are there things like this which were there before? Is it just me suffering the same? What can I then do? Because you only do what you know. If you don't know anything, and then nothing happens. That's why I like what the Bible says. It is the truth you know that will set you free. So is there some truth that you can actually invest in to know so that you can be able to work on it? So that is my second closing remark, that please let's understand. Let's be able to understand where we are coming from. Let's appreciate where we are going. So if, for example, now in my own family, it has been about polygamy, I now understand the pains, I now understand, and then what do I need to do? That is when I decided whatever happens, I will pay every cost to marry one wife at all costs. And the kind of marriage I will have is not going to be the marriage of padlock, but will be the marriage of wedlock, because I want to wed my wife and marry my wife on my wedding night. In here in Uganda, there are two types of marriage: marriage of padlock and marriage of wedlock. Padlock, you just ask somebody, is the door locked? Somebody has to lock the door, and then you declare yourself married. So that is the kind of marriage in my village. I said, no, I don't want that kind of marriage anymore. I want something that I can commit to. From day one, I can commit and marry one wife for the rest of my life, because I've seen the problems of polygamy in my family. So the question is, can you understand what has been there? Can you define some of the truths? What are some of the underlying beliefs in your family when it comes to marriage, when it comes to finances, when it comes to education, when it comes to all sorts of areas that concerns life? What are some of the trends? So that when you understand that fact, then that the truth is what is going to paint for you a picture to move. Number three is, do not let other people's opinion about you determine how you think about yourself. Many of us, we are working with people's opinion about who we are. Like I wrote in my book, for all my 35 years, I lived other people's dreams for my life. I lived other people's dreams for my life. Why? Because it is what they approved for me to do. Until they did say this, I can't do anything, because if I did otherwise, You know, I like what Brother Sam said here. In Africa, we are motivated by fear. That is why in Africa you will hear parents say, you either do this or else, you know. So it is out, we are motivated by fear. And the fear is what drives us crazy, you know. So if we can get to a place to appreciate one thing, that let people's opinion about you not define who you are. People will judge you according to where they met you from. And if you remain where they met you, you're okay and they're fine. The day you move where you're supposed to be, they will have all kinds of issues with you. You know, that's why when I wanted to get married, I was asked, is there anyone in my village who has ever married the way I married? Is there anyone who has paid dowry like the way I have paid? Is there anyone who has cleared all dowry like I have done? You know, so some of those things are there, but then we can still be able to deal with those issues and then allow ourselves to move on, irrespective of where we're coming from. Otherwise, I want to speak a blessing about everyone out there, and this
I think we have lost Daniel maybe for some network issues. So I think the order should have been ladies first, but then I think I needed to. Of course, I'm going to end this, but I needed her to speak just before I close this. Yeah. By the way, she's the CEO of Dr. M. Health Corner. You can find it on Facebook. There is a lot about mental health and a lot about physical health. You need to go there and check her out. So, Dr. Ona, to give us your closing remarks as we conclude the session today.
Thank you so much, Claire. I would like everyone here watching us. Claire, do you want to mute yourself? I can't hear. Thank you so much. So I would like everyone watching us to realize that these traumatic experiences, sometimes they are brought to us to bring us to other levels of success. And a lot of times, all of us have experienced some rejection in our lives. The key thing is to heal our inner child, because our inner child shows up in our workplaces, in the relationships, in marriages, in parenting. Till we heal from those traumatic experiences, we're going to keep coming back, recycling them in these aspects I just mentioned. So it's important for us to heal and remember that each one of us has been rejected at some point in our lives. So it's up to us to use that rejection for our own power and take back our power. At some point, your power was taken away by your parent, by your teacher, by your pastor, by a friend. But it's just about time. Like we said, find those people that you can trust, a therapist to work with, mentors, attend all these empowering workshops, books. You know, Daniel is an author here. So these are the resources you could use to actually, and sometimes even you have to even change the friends you have. You know, I always say you are the average of the 5 people you spend time with. So it's just about time. After this conversation, look around. The 5 people you spend time with, these people are the people that you want to get into your future. Are they holding you back? Are they the people that you want to see in your future? Are they holding your dreams back? Are you finding yourself their opinions matter than yours? Once you find that that is the case, it's about time to change. And use affirmations. In the morning, when I start my day, I know it's going to be a good day. It doesn't matter how irritable a patient could actually annoy me. At the end, it's up to me to react to those negative thoughts or negative comments or whatever. It's up to me. I need to always remember that the power is within me. So let us not let other people give us these negative energies and we take and run with them. So positive affirmations. Wake up in the morning, speak positive to yourself. Speak life to your child. Speak positive to your life. Speak positive to your friends, to your family. You know, affirm your spouse. You know, sometimes women, they forget this. Men have been rejected in their childhood. I'm not saying you're going to baby your husband, but learn to give positive affirmations. It builds your marriage. It brings you together because Each one of us needs acceptance. Each one of us, we want to hear those positive affirmations. So don't underestimate that. Use that to your power, and it will nurture your relationships. Thank you so much. And of course, if you know that you are struggling with mental health struggles, go see a therapist. And there's medications out there. Depression is not for white people. It affects us all. It affects every race, every culture, every socioeconomic status. That's why today we see even rich people, millionaires, committing suicide. They left this world because they never healed from the pain they were carrying. So let us heal from our inner children. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Unat, for those wonderful closing remarks. And whoever has been watching us globally, from me here in Uganda, a small landlocked country somewhere in East Africa. Say thank you, Dr. Onati, kind regards to everyone in Canada, to our other guests that have just left for some other issues. We thank you all for being here, and to everyone else who has been supportive. We thank you to have a blessed evening, a good morning, a good night, wherever in the world you are watching us from. I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Claire. God bless.